think, act, and prosper. You are now tuned into the Money Level Show.
Now, will oil prices continue to go higher? That is what we're going to be answering today. I want to welcome you all to the Money Level Show, where we think, act, and prosper. So today we're going to talk about the price of oil, and we're going to talk about what is happening politically around oil, and are we going to see prices increase or not? So let's go ahead and dive into it. I just want to let you all know that I am always consistently thinking about content to put out. I've been going through a lot of sicknesses lately. I don't know if you can hear it in my voice or not, but I just wanted to forewarn you all just in case you hear that in my voice. Joining with me today is my new gold chain. I have a 24K chain from Mean with the 1/10 ounce Krugerrand. I don't know if you all could see that on the 14K bezel or whatnot. And I'm not trying to stun on y'all. I told you all I'm a gold bug. I haven't showed you all any of my pieces or anything like that, but I just wanted to show you all, yes, I am a gold bug and I'm actually about that life, right? So let's go ahead and dive into this. All right, so we know that gas prices have continuously been increasing. We know that Joe Biden has released from the SPR, which is the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. These are barrels of oil that the U.S. has in reserve. So the president comes out and says they're going to release that to relieve gas prices. We know that gas prices have not been relieved enough to be able to really suppress the price down consistently. We see that it may drop a little bit and then it goes back, or it goes back higher or whatnot. But we know that it helps a little bit for that time being, maybe for a few days, maybe. I don't even think it works for like a week, but I haven't seen prices come down too long. So we're going to go ahead and go into this article. Now, this is an article by CNBC. Don't trust CNBC for your financial advice. However, you know, this is important news that they're putting out right here in relation to what Joe Biden is doing. And other articles actually address the same thing. So we're going to go ahead and look at this one today. U.S. to release 1 million barrels of oil per day from reserves to help cut gas prices. So Joe Biden came out and he announced that he is going to release 1 million barrels of oil per day from the SPR. Now let's go ahead and read some more of this. The U.S. will release 1 million barrels of oil per day from its strategic reserves to help cut gas prices and fight inflation across the country, the White House announced Thursday. Now, hang on. Now, we have to ask ourselves, is this actually fighting inflation? I believe that inflation is a monetary phenomenon. That is what Milton Friedman said. He said inflation is a monetary phenomenon. So when you create so much money supply, then you start to see inflation. This does not fight inflation, being able to release from the strategic reserves. I mean, if they believe it fights inflation, then you believe what you want, but I don't believe that it gets to the root of the issue, what's happening under the hood. President Joe Biden plans to tap the nation's strategic petroleum reserve for the next 6 months as domestic producers ramp up production, according to a fact sheet released by the Biden administration. So they're saying that domestic producers are going to ramp up production. Now, it kind of makes me wonder if we are changing policy so our domestic partners, our domestic companies can actually produce more oil to help resolve this issue. It says the scale of this release is unprecedented. The world has never had a release of oil reserves at this 1 million per day rate for this length of time. So he's talking about 6 months. So however many days is in 6 months, he's talking about, that is how much million barrels he is planning to release. The White House said in a release, this record release will provide a historic amount of supply to serve as bridge until the end of the year when domestic production ramps up. So it says domestic production will ramp up at the end of the year. So that's interesting. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at some other things. What's going on? Now, we look at how much oil is consumed in the United States. So this is the U.S. Energy Information Administration, and we're just going to look at how much actual oil are we using per day in the United States. So let's go ahead and get into that. So how much oil is consumed in the United States? Only a small amount of crude oil is directly consumed in the United States. Nearly all crude oil that is produced or imported to the United States is refined into petroleum products such as gasoline, diesel fuel, heating oil, and jet fuel, which are then consumed. So they're talking about how oil is refined and all those different things, right? So it says in 2021, the United States consumed on average of about 19.78 million barrels of petroleum per day, or a total of about 7.22 billion barrels of petroleum. This was an increase in consumption of about 1.6 barrels per day over consumption in 2020. Now, Joe Biden is saying that they're going to release 1 million barrels from the SPR, and we use about 19.78 million barrels per day. So that is going to knock us down to about 18.78 million barrels per day. Now, you got to ask yourself, is that actually going to do something? Now, if Joe Biden is going to release that, is that actually going to reduce the price of oil? Is it going to, knock a few cents off the gallon? What is it actually going to do? Because we still have 18.78 million barrels of petroleum per day that we're going to be using. So this is very interesting just to see how this plays out. Now, one thing that we've been seeing is OPEC. So OPEC is the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries. So these are different countries that come together and they actually export petroleum, right? So OPEC has decided they are not going to up production. We're going to look at that in a second as well. So they're not going to up production. They've had the West and the EU lean on them saying like, hey, we need more oil produced. And they're saying like, no, it's actually going to cost more if we have to produce more oil. So let's look at that. So we see that starting in 1960, it had 5 countries, which were Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and Venezuela. Then other countries were added later, which were Qatar, Indonesia, Libya, the United Arab Emirates, Algeria, Nigeria, Ecuador, Gabon, Angola, Equatorial Guinea, and Congo. And then you also have OPEC Plus, which includes countries like Russia and Canada. So we see that these countries are what makes up the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. They make up OPEC. They're saying that they don't want to increase production. You look at the countries on this list and look at how many of these we actually have problems with. That was one thing that I noticed at firsthand when I looked at this list. Iran, we've had problems with. Iraq, we've had problems with. Saudi Arabia, the tension is heating up there. Saudi Arabia is talking about pricing oil in yuan, and they're talking about going around the dollar system. Also, the prince came out and said he's not concerned with what Biden has to say about him. And then you have Venezuela. We've had problems with Venezuela. We've put sanctions on Venezuela. And now we're seeing that these countries make up OPEC and they produce a lot of the world's oil. And they're saying that they are not going to produce more oil. They're going to keep oil at the same amount of production because they're saying that if they produce more, it is actually going to make the price even more expensive. Now, let's go ahead and jump into this article. It says that as oil soars, OPEC and its allies decline to offer relief. It says the oil cartel known as OPEC Plus said it would continue the strategy agreed to in July, rubber stamping a 400,000 barrel a day production increase for April. Now, this came out early March. They also had some recent sayings where they're saying that they're not going to increase more production and it's actually going to increase the prices. And so we're looking at OPEC saying like, hey, we have all this oil and we're not going to produce more. So this actually just makes the problem even worse that I think. And it's actually probably going to make oil prices go higher. Gas prices will go higher, I believe. Now, historically, when the president comes out and releases from the strategic oil reserve, all right, petroleum reserve. Now we see that it usually backfires. So this was a chart that Lynn Alden actually retweeted back in November. And I was looking at this and it's like, okay, well, when the price of oil went higher, they actually announced that they were released from the SPR. So you look at the gray line is the crude oil price. Then the dots are the SPR release announcement. So we see that they were releasing around this time in the late 90s. And then you saw the price of oil continue to go up. That's why it says backfire. They were releasing again in 2001, the early 2000s. You saw the price of oil go up. They said it backfired. They announced another release in around 2005. You saw the price go down and then it just skyrocketed back up. Then you had the 2008 financial crisis. So we saw that the price actually went down. Then you get to the areas such as 2011 where they announced the release and then they're saying that it backfired there, that the price went higher. The price of oil went down again. They released a bunch of oil around these times. The price continues to go up. I mean, here, of course, is COVID, 2020. And then they had the historic release here on in March of 2021. So I think that the price is going to go higher. And that is kind of how I'm playing it. That is what I'm suspecting. So we're going to go ahead and look at some tweets from Doomberg. So Doomberg actually retweeted this. This is from Shy Girl Tracy. She actually has some really good information on Twitter. Be sure to go give her a follow. She studies a lot of the global energy and the markets and stuff. And so I really like the content that she puts out. So this is actual U.S. crude oil production. This is how much we produce per day. So when you're looking at this chart, and this is also from the U.S. Energy Information Administration, the EIA, and it talks about how much 1,000 barrels per day is produced. So we have about 11 million barrels produced per day. So this is thousands of barrels. So remember, one means 1,000, 10,000s, 100,000s, 1 millions, tens of millions, right? So we're looking at 11 million barrels per day, 11,371,000 barrels per day. So that is how much we are producing per day, but we are still consuming 18.78 million barrels per day with the strategic oil reserve. So Biden's releasing 1 million per day, and we're seeing that, we're using about 18.78 million barrels per day, and this is how much is actually being produced at the current moment, right? So let's go ahead and look at another tweet from Doomberg, right? So this one right here is the actual supply of the SPR, of the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve Inventory. So we see that we had a lot of barrels up here. We were actually doing pretty well. I think this was during the shale boom, and we were producing a lot of oil and everything, but it has been continuously just trending downward. And now we are pretty low on supply. And so he's planning on releasing 1 million barrels per day for 6 months. I mean, I just don't know how this is going to play out. How much do we actually have to be able to release? Now, Doomberg says that we have about 48.5 days of domestic oil production left in the SPR. So we have 48 days left of domestic oil production. Now, what do you all think? I want to know what you all think. I mean, I think that the price of oil is going to go higher. I believe that we are in a commodity super cycle. I think that commodities have been unloved for a long time, and now we're starting to see them come back. What do you all think? Drop a comment down below. How are you all hedging? How are you all being able to profit off of this news that I'm giving you all, off the news that is being shared? And so I want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear what you think. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe. I want to thank you all for joining the Money Level Show, and y'all have a blessed day. Peace.